Hi guys, it is April from Getting Hooga With It. I wanted to share with you the books that I have on my shelves that are World War II books set in Germany. Some of them I've read, some of them I haven't read, some of them I'm in the middle of. And I just thought this would be an interesting little video to do with you. So let's get into it. Book that I want to share with you is At the Wolf's Table. So this book is coming out in February, so you can run out and get it. I have not finished this book. I started it around Christmas time and I put it down for an unknown reason. I genuinely don't know. Life was really crazy for me at that time and I wasn't reading a ton. So I put it down, but I am going to pick it back up. This is about a woman who is selected and required to eat for Hitler, essentially. So about an hour or two before Hitler is about to sit down for his dinner or lunch or breakfast, she and several other women would sit down and eat the food that was going to be prepared for him. Basically to test if they would get poisoned, because Hitler was very afraid that he'd be poisoned because, rightfully so, he was a terrible man. So this is her story. The premise of that, I love the premise of that. I think that's so fascinating. So yeah, that's At the Wolf's Table. This next book is a book that I'm reading right now while I'm filming this. I might have already finished it by the time you're seeing this, but it's The Aftermath by Ridian Brooke. Now, this takes place like just after World War II, so I'm throwing it in here. It's not technically World War II, but so close. This takes place in 1946. We're in Hamburg, and the Germans have been defeated, and the Brits are living in Germany and have occupied Germany at this point. So we follow Colonel Louis Morgan. He is stationed in Hamburg, and his wife and his son come to Hamburg as well. And they are going to stay in this home. I'm sorry if you can hear Libby snoring in the background. It's really loud. You hear that? She's just gonna keep snoring, so sorry about that background noise. But yeah, so they come to stay, and essentially what would happen at this time is German people, just everyday citizens, would be kicked out of their houses, and the Brits would move into those houses. However, Colonel Louis Morgan meets the owners of the house, a man and his daughter. The mother had died during the war, and he decides, why don't we just all live together? So I'm really enjoying this. This is beautifully written, like stunningly written. Ridian Brooke has written other books, but not historical fiction, and I really think that's the jam for Ridian Brooke. But in any case, it is tense because not so long ago they were fighting against each other. Both of these families have lost family members to the war, so there's a lot of animosity and it's just very uncomfortable a lot of the time. But I'm really enjoying this. Another book that I haven't read it yet, but it's The Undertaking by Audrey McGee. This was a finalist for the Bailey's Women's Prize. This is about two people who don't really know each other, but they get married. It's like a marriage of convenience. And then they get really thrown into the war. It sounds like they just completely immerse themselves into the Nazi regime, and it's their story. And I don't know what a marriage that's based on definitely not love, like how that can survive it unless they're both completely on the same page. Ooh, I don't know. And I don't know if they're both terrible people. I don't know. It does sound fascinating. I don't hear a lot of stories like this from the perspective of people in the Nazi regime, and I think it sounds neat. This next book, okay, I'm including it, but it takes place in two places, France and Germany, but I did have to suggest All the Light We Cannot See. I read this, winner of the Pulitzer Prize. I loved this book. We're following a little blind girl in France, and we also follow a young German boy in Germany, and he is recruited to become a Nazi soldier. And yeah, Werner is a really interesting character, and you feel a lot for him and his situation. I think when I was reading this, I was more fascinated by Marie-Laure's story because she's blind in the middle of war, and I just can't really imagine what that would be like. So I was much more fascinated by that storyline, but Werner's story in and of itself, like he's a child who was given up for adoption, or his parents died. I can't remember if he's orphaned or how he comes to live in an orphanage. But his storyline in and of itself is really fascinating. So that's All the Light We Cannot See. A few more. This next one is Those Who Save Us. And this is about a mother and daughter. Oh my gosh, Libby's snoring is crazy. I'm gonna take a video of her after because holy man, she's just getting her snooze on. Sorry, so Those Who Save Us is about two women, a mother and a daughter. The mother, Anna, has refused to talk about Germany during World War II. She will not talk about it to her daughter, and her daughter Trudy was 3 when they were liberated by Americans during the war. So she didn't really remember a lot. But there is this photo of the two of them with a Nazi officer. And now Trudy is a professor of German history, and she starts to dive into who was this man and gets to know that story. And it does sound really fascinating. Next is, oh my gosh, one of my favorite books of all time. Favorite books of all time. The Book Thief by Markus Zuzek. This is a special anniversary edition, which I think is stunning. I should reread it, reading this edition at some point, but I'm almost afraid to touch it because I love it that much. This is about a little girl whose parents have to give her up. She ends up living with some German people, just citizens, who end up being very kind and wonderful people. And she lives with them, and it is about her story growing up in Germany during World War II and kind of understanding what's going on, but not entirely. And the people that she meets, and she brings hope and light to so many people's lives. I loved this book. It will make you cry. Oh, that one will make you cry. Okay, next up is The Women in the Castle by Jessica Shattuck. I have not read this, but this is about a group of women who meet at this castle after all of their husbands have died in the resistance. They have been trying to kill Hitler. It backfired and they're all dead, and these women are gathering together. I don't know if this happens right after the war or during it. It doesn't say here, but it does sound really fascinating, and I would like to read this at some point. Okay, last book, and then I will stop making you listen to Libby snore her face off. The last one is The Orphan's Tale by Pam Jenoff. This is about a young girl named Noah. She's 16 years old. She has been forced to give up her child. She becomes pregnant by a Nazi officer, and that is probably why she's forced to give up her child. Although in that time, it was never looked fondly upon when young girls had babies out of wedlock. So she gives up her child and she goes on the run, and she finds this like boxcar, this train boxcar filled with Jewish babies. And she takes one and saves it and runs away to the German circus. I don't know when I'm going to be able to read this. This is just a storyline. The idea of a bunch of Jewish babies that you know are not going to survive just makes me so angry and really sad. Like, the storyline of this, the premise of it makes me so sad. One day I will read it, but I don't know when I'm going to be strong enough to read that one. So in any case, those are the books that I have on my shelves. World War II, set in Germany. Let me know in the comments below. Are there any books set in Germany, you know, in World War II that you have loved that I don't have, that maybe I should keep my eyes peeled for? I would love to know, and I will talk with you guys soon. Okay, bye.